Everything that we want to do in our lives needs to come from a place of sustainability, taking the time to think, what is it that I truly want? And then asking why. I want to lose body fat. Why? I want to be fitter and more mobile. Why?
There's lots of different types of motivation. A lot of people use this kind of dark motivation.
Dark motivation is usually associated with changing everything at once. And in a week, 2 weeks, it falls apart because it wasn't sustainable.
Is this something you see a lot in the fitness world?
I've seen a lot of people in incredible shape who aren't necessarily happy. So a good check is to
So welcome back, listeners, to another episode. Today I have with me a wonderful man who I'm lucky to have met through some friends, and we had some very enlightening conversation, some of which we might delve in today, some of which we may not. And this man, he on the front of the world, is a fitness guru, is a fitness expert, taking people through transformations and various exercises, and has the body of a chiseled Adonis. But I know him a little bit better than that, and I know that underneath there are so many more complexities and intricate details of who he is and how he moves through the world. I'd love to introduce you to Alex.
Hello, thank you for having me. Just saw some fluff in my head. Good stuff. Thank you for the great intro, and thank you for having me. Looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, man. I'm going to dive in and when I ask a question that I'm starting to ask people now is, like, what was a kind of significant challenge in your life that you faced and it's kind of shaped how you are today or how you see the world today?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is a challenge that I pretty much created for myself. And since you had the intro about the physique and the fitness, I'll bring that first example up. And some people know and remember that I did a 24-hour burpee day, and that of course brought on many challenges. And it seems like a cop out talking about a challenge that I created for myself, but I learned so much more than I expected to learn. I expected to go in and just go and do some burpees, and it will be hard on the body. But yeah, I learned so much about my mindset, my mind, and what happens when we push beyond the comfort of the body. Of course, a workout in 1 hour can be hard, and we might talk about embodiment and how great it is to get into the body and out of the head, and what routes might kind of evolve from that pathway. But 24 hours of extreme intensity took me to some places that I'd never really been before in the mind. And it really stripped away layers and layers and layers. It's really hard to explain, but this connection with our body that we have, we are capable of so much in mind and body. And I think this was the biggest lesson that I got from it, is that whilst discomfort is not a nice thing to have in our life, and we want to do our best to avoid discomfort, sometimes it can really teach you a lot, and how much, if we're able to be resilient against some forms of comfort, we're able to really learn so much about ourselves and what we're truly capable of. So I think it's this fine balance of pushing ourselves but being kind to ourselves. It's like a paradox of self-care, self-love, but also challenge and pushing. So it took 24 hours, an entire day, for me to have like a real life example of that balance. That's one challenge that I like to talk about. That's like not 8-9 years ago that I did that, and that also taught me to never do a 24-hour challenge again. Because there's sleep deprivation and physical exhaustion all tied into that as well. What other challenge? I mean, we're probably going to talk about fatherhood, and I think maybe I'll talk about the challenge of fatherhood, like leading up to fatherhood. It's, of course, I got my loved ones around me, but the challenge of life being about me, and then suddenly going into the stress, the pressure, the anxiety of birth, and how different that experience is for every family. And then what happens after birth, and being a father and having to learn as as it's all happening. There's no real course or anything. You're learning as it's all happening, and the challenge of knowing that you don't know how to do everything, and working out as you go along, trying to be the best husband you can be at the same time as being the best father I can be. It's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, and every day is different. Is that what you're finding 7 months in?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, man, it just keeps shifting and changing every couple of weeks. Basically, he changes in some way that's substantial. Like as I sit here now, 2 weeks ago, probably more like 2.5 weeks ago, he didn't crawl. He wasn't crawling yet, right? He could kind of get on his all fours. And then 2.5 weeks later, he can crawl around the whole apartment. He can go where he wants. Like, you know, so it's this ever changing experience, or the way he eats or food he eats. Like, you know, we started him on solid food now. And, you know, 2 weeks ago, he's like happily eating certain things. And then now he's got this lovely technique he does where if he doesn't want something, he just shuts his mouth really tightly. And you just can't get anything in, like at all. You can't get anything in his mouth. And it's quite funny when you see him doing it, you're like, okay, he doesn't want this. And, you know, it is just this ever shifting landscape. And I see my own kind of, you know, there's a big learning journey even in that, like when kind of like what comes up for you when he's not doing what I want him to do, you know?
Yeah. Would you question if that's like, is that because I want him to do that, or is that because I want him to do that for his health or development? You have to, like you said, question why it is that I want him to do that.
Mm-hmm, exactly. There's times where, you know, I want him to go to sleep. It's like 9:30 and I want him to go to sleep. I think it's best for him to go to sleep, but actually it's because I want to relax, and I want to relax and I want to have some downtime before I go to bed, or I want to go to bed. And it's something that me and my partner have discussed sometimes. Is like, you can get into this cycle of, you think, okay, what's best for him? This thing is best for him. Is it really best for him? Is it best for us? Oh yeah, it's best for us. But what's best for us is best for him. Because if we're like relaxed and grounded and well slept, and we can be of service to him, because, you know, much of our life is being in service to him, and we can support him and be more present and kind of open. Yeah. But it's this like juggling of like, what's best for him? What's best for us? What's best for all of us? And are those things kind of linked? It's quite an interesting juggling act.
Yeah, well, they certainly are linked. I think that's so true. You can't serve until you've fully served yourself. And there's times where that's going to be a direct correlation, and other times where it might just be you want to fully serve yourself and actually he needs something else. And you've hit that point bang on. And recently he hasn't been sleeping very well. And I've started to think, like last night, he wasn't showing any signs of sleepiness, but I knew that it's his routine and he should go to sleep now. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I've got to do this thing for work. I've got to do that. So that's why I also want him to sleep. So what if he's actually just feeling really playful right now and he isn't going to sleep? Shall I just honor that and he'll fall asleep? So it's a mixture of like, is this a sleep issue? Is this my issue? So it's an ever evolving thing. And like you said, one thing might work today, in 2 weeks it might be totally different. That's what I'm finding as well.
Yeah, ever changing. A question I've been asking quite a few fathers, friends of mine. Actually, I asked this question to you before I had my boy. How did you prepare yourself emotionally and mentally for fatherhood?
Well, we could look at this in so many different categories of preparation, couldn't we? But mentally and spiritually, really thinking, knowing and understanding that I am a being of energy and frequency and my own conditioning and my own traumas, I wanted to prepare the best I could in regards to being aware at least and shining as much light on any traumas and conditioning I have, so that I imprint as little as that as possible onto him, knowing and understanding that parenting and being a child inevitably is going to be some form of conditioning. But I wanted to be at a place of a level of self-awareness so much that I could enable as much freedom for him as possible, that I don't create any limitations, any boxes, or just clear my ancestral issues. So I was looking at my family, looking at my father, my male line, and thinking, what is showing up for me that I feel I can bring to the surface and transcend myself, so that if there's anything that needs to be worked out, it can stop here. Whilst of course loving and honoring who I am and the ancestors and my family, that's who they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just thinking, how can I give my son the best chance possible?
Yeah. I love that, because as you say, the conditioning is like, it's impossible to pass on. I think as you were saying that, I was thinking it's like inspecting your karma to reduce as much as you can the pass on of your karma, of the burden that's maybe been in your lineage. And it's quite a big job, I think, as fathers, because, many of us we come into a kind of generation, not just our generation, but many generations before, where fathering shifted to a kind of secondary role in a man's life to work. Many of the men before us, got caught up in, or not caught up, but that became the cultural norm, industrialization and so forth. And it's like a man works, it's not necessarily his place is to be with his kids. So it's very easy to just kind of pass on that and continue that. And, we see in the world, and maybe you see with yourself or your friends or family, where like that actually has a lot of harm to the little ones when they're born and as they're raised.
Yeah. So from a more practical level, I've been working hard and really wanting to be the provider of the family and create a way for me to secure and provide the family in a way that doesn't mean that I'm out all day and away from the family. So really prioritizing my business, prioritizing my structure of life so that I could succeed but not be away from the family. How can I best balance that? So it's so true. And I want to challenge those normal narrative means. And whilst it's difficult, we've all got to earn money, and the man has to go out and do his things. It's this difficult balance. But I don't want fatherhood to be a secondary thing. I want it to all be intertwined and mixed together as much as possible.
Yeah.
Is that the same with you? And how do you balance like working for yourself and that, like a standard day in a week of like when you want to really spend as much time with him and the family and also work? Like, how does it look for you?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because my dad was somewhat absent in my life. Like, him and my mother were together when I was first born, and he never lived very far away. But he comes from a father who was incredibly absent and very uninterested in him. So I was really like, I don't want that for my kids. Me and my partner had a lot of conversations before we conceived about like what sort of parents we want to be, what sort of values and traits we want to instill in our child and children. So I work from home primarily. This is the office that I work from. And most days he's here, like Monday and Fridays, usually he's with my mum, which is kind of nice to podcast because then there's no crying. So like in between meetings, he'll see me come out and, I'll play with him, even if it's like 10 minutes here and there. But it is a really difficult balance in like really seeing that, I want to create a business that doesn't require me to work like 50, 60 hours a week. But to get to that place, I might need to work 50 or 60 hours a week so that in a year or 2 or 3, I'm down to kind of 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week, whatever. So it is a really difficult juggling act. I found myself sometimes sitting down in the evening. It's, 6:30 and I finished up all my calls and I need to do some admin. I need to write some content. And you sit in front of the laptop and I'm like, he's outside my door or he's outside. And I'm like, I could go and play with him and spend time with him, or I could finish this piece I'm on. And I think in the early months, I was like, fuck the work. And I would go and like spend my time with him. And I think what I've done now is I've kind of balanced that out. One of the things that I brought in quite early, and I think it's worked out quite well, is in the mornings when he wakes up, which is usually between kind of 6 and 7:30, I take him and my partner stays in bed. She looks after him during the night if he wakes up. Yeah. So that time she gets like solid sleep to herself, but it means that me and him get time together without anybody else around. So we'll go for a walk, we'll play on his little play gym, and we'll go to the shops, and sometimes, I take him to the supermarket, whatever, but we get our time together that's like not involving anyone else, which is quite nice. And then on the weekends, I make sure that I do my best not to be really working, especially for the afternoon and evening, and spend time. But it is this like constant juggle of time and attention, and trying to like you said, trying to get the business in a place where it's like, okay, now I can really like be there when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old and they want to go to football practice or cricket or whatever it is, and you can like take them there. Because I remember my years where my mum was working loads, my dad didn't seem that interested. So I was going to like football practice on my own and getting on the bus, or I was going and played cricket a lot. So I would go and play, and all the other dads and parents would be there, but mine wouldn't be. And it's like, in my mind, I'm like, well, that's not the reality I want for him, unless that's what he chooses. And he's like, I want to go on my own, whatever. But putting kind of life and business in order, so that can be a possibility.
That's really beautiful. I wonder how often, like a childhood like you had, or like we all have, whether a circumstance creates the alternate because you've seen how it is, or whether it's just a cycle that repeats, maybe for people who are less aware or less conscious, but with a level of consciousness that you have, it's a real choice to not have that reality and circumstance for your children.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that me and my partner have discussed is not overcompensating the other way too much, because for her, it was like she felt like she couldn't express emotion, and there was like a level of kind of emotional neglect. So we're like, well, we want him to be able to be like emotionally intelligent, be able to express his emotions and feelings, but we equally don't want him to like just have free reign of expressing however he wants all of the time. I've got a little nephew who's 5 years old, and his tantrums are like really becoming quite it's almost like a little show. We go to my sister's place and he has these big tantrums, and you watch and you're like, wow, this is, there's quite some acting occurring here for him to get what he wants. But she deals with it really well. She deals with it really fantastically. But it is this balance. And I think it's one of those things that's underspoken about men. I think there's this narrative of kind of, we get the easy ride, and obviously we don't give birth and so forth. But all the men I've spoken to, friends and men on the podcast, every man I've spoken to, and I wonder if this is similar for you, is as soon as they found out that their partner was pregnant, the thing they started to think about were the very masculine things, like providing financially. Do we have a stable home? Do we have the structure that can accommodate for a child? Like all these sorts of things were the first things that they wanted to put in place, or they can start to concern them.
Yeah, these are certainly top of mind. And also just, really wanting to secure the house, the family, the finances, and also not put any pressure on, or not have my wife feel any pressure of going back to work as fast as possible, and all of these things. So the more practical masculine things were certainly on my mind, but also some of the more emotional aspects were on my mind as well, about what kind of father I want to be. How do I want to be a positive influence and impact on this little person? So it was a mix, knowing that I was going to find my way as it went, and also to answer the previous question of what work was I doing before he arrived as well.
What's been a kind of unexpected lesson you've kind of taken for yourself from your fatherhood journey so far? Unexpected
lesson. I'll start with maybe more of a practical masculine answer first of all, and that is just the clear structuring of the day and procrastination, and having my life figured out. Because, like you said about that 6:30 time where you're wanting to go play, or you're needing to help balance out the time because the mum needs that time to sleep, and it's all about balancing. It's like before I could really just splurge out my life and get away with the fact that I didn't have much structure, and I'd just procrastinate too much and find my way through. Whereas now there's just no time. If I procrastinate and spend time with him like I want to, then I just wouldn't get anywhere near as much done that I need to and want to. So first of all, it's just sorting out my life, my calendar, my structure, and prioritizing. I used to think that I could get everything done. Now I know that I can't. So now it's a choice of being very aware of what are my priorities today in the segment of my day or this week, and working towards those priorities, knowing that not everything is going to get done in all aspects of my life. And then another unexpected lesson, every parent says it's a love that they can't explain. And when you're not a parent or before you're a parent, you don't know what to expect with that. But now, seeing him smile or laugh, or seeing his eyes light up when he sees you, it's a feeling that you can't explain, and brings a perspective to life that is just on a whole greater scale about what's important. Like, as soon as you think that he's unwell or something's wrong or there's anxiety about something, it's like nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. And this is the only thing that matters. So a new love, a new perspective on all of life, really, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's as you said, it's something that people can't explain. Like, people say to you, like, oh, when you have a child, like, everything in your life's going to change. And I would like nod along, like, yeah. Like, everything's going to change. And then it kind of happens. And you're like, oh, I see now what you mean. Yeah. There's even times I saw a friend of mine a few days back, and it was at a men's circle that I was running. And he was going, and normally in that moment, I'd have been like, hey, like, we should try and catch up in the next month. Like, he's going to be here for a while before he flies out to the US. And I was just like, I was under no illusion, because I was like, that's not going to be possible. I'm not going to prioritize that, like, in the next month. And I was like, well, hey man, like, hope you're well. Like, hope things are going, let me know when you're back from the States. Like, summer could be a good time, because you just know what's important and what's possible. Like, and what you can really fit into your day, your week, your month, when the priorities are very clear in your mind, but not just your mind, kind of like, as they say, they're kind of clearing your being, like, what's the most important things to you and what's moving you towards, not just the man you want to be in the life you want to be, but like the family you're wanting to create as well.
Yeah. I wonder if any of those very practical things we're talking about is different for an entrepreneur, business owner, self-employed person versus a 9-to-5 kind of person working in an office or for a company, and how different this conversation would be in those kind of circumstances. Of course, we're all still learning and challenging ourselves and wanting to be the man and the father that we want to be. But I wonder if having some more rigid structure would create something different in my experience. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know too many people I'm close to who, actually, I got one friend who is very 9-to-5, and he's got 2 kids, and they're probably worth asking and just comparing. Actually, I'm going to see him in a few weeks to compare notes, because it would be interesting. I know he always said the hardest thing is obviously going back after paternity leave and knowing that you're going to be, that's something I'm not sure as you, for me, I don't have to, I started working, but I know that, and there's a good and there's a pros and cons to the fact that I know he's just on the other side of the door most of the time. But there's also the big pro of, like, he is just on the other side of the door. There won't be like these 10-hour stretches where I've disappeared, or, I have to go away on business trips to far-flung places very often. So I imagine it's a very different experience for the kind of the working man, the 9-to-5 man.
I used to get really excited for any opportunities that took me away, like whether it was any kind of fitness trip, or back when I did more like fitness modeling, or 2 days here in Europe or a week there. But now I'm just like, not interested unless we're all going. I just don't want to think about it too much. Not right now, anyway. I'm still in the early phases, earlier than you.
Yeah.
I don't know how many years it will take before that answer swings around.
Yeah. I've had some time apart from him, and it was, for the first few days, it was really nice to wake up when I wanted to wake up. That was probably the best thing. Like, oh my God, I'm just waking up to the sound of not even my alarm. I'm just waking up naturally.
Yeah. When you've had enough sleep, maybe.
Yeah. But you do miss him.
Yeah.
A question for you actually is, since so much of you is built around fitness, how much has having a little baby impacted your kind of personal fitness regime, from kind of food and ability to work out?
Yeah. Well, I think sleep, first of all, is one thing, just since we touched on it, is the initial less sleep and not waking up when I want to, and not getting my early nights like I used to, is one thing. I don't know. That feels like sometimes that's impacting my recovery from workouts. And maybe increasing my caffeine intake in the day, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing and helps me still get my workout in. At the beginning, yeah, it felt like the dad bod could certainly start taking place, because without the strong motivation to eat healthy, and with less sleep, and without the energy to work out, it felt very easy for me to slip away from that. But honestly, I think because my fitness, my physique, my health is so attached to my business activities, and my motivation is clear, my habits are clear, I've kind of, after that very first initial phase, just continued and got along with it, and feel good about it. And yeah, going to the gym, working out, filming my workouts, and eating just like I ate before. So I'm all right. I'm feeling good about it at the moment. But it can all change. But I feel really grateful that I have intertwined my fitness, personal fitness and business and social media all together. There's negative sides of that. And many years ago, that felt like the pressure was too high, and it led into some negative habits of binging and restricting, and too much pressure on myself. But before he came along, I found a nice balance of how I want to show up in the world, and that is being my most authentic self, and being real. And if that meant a phase where I'm not training or eating rubbish, or I'm not feeling my best, then that's the way it was, really. And ultimately not showing up for social media, not showing up for other people, but showing up for myself, and not dieting or training for one event in weeks and months to come, or a photo shoot or anything like that, but to feel good each day, in my body, but also in my mental health. And what are the habits each day that make me feel that way? And I now know what those habits are for myself, and they are anchors in my life. And while some of them have been challenged by my new routine, like my morning routine that I'm still figuring out, and I'm kind of just recreating now. But generally speaking, when it comes to nutrition and activity and training, these were anchors that were well ingrained into my life.
So strongly established.
Yeah.
Out of interest, what's the morning routine you've fallen into or been able to capture now?
A lovely morning routine. The first few months of my son's arrival was waking up in bed, enjoying a cup of coffee, and whatever we wanted to do in the day. Is it go out and go for a walk? Is it one of us has an appointment to go and get to, and then I just get on with my life? And because of the time away from business and things like that, whether that's the night before or the extended morning, because I felt so tired, it meant that I neglected things that I needed and just went straight into laptop time, straight into phone time. So that's what happened for the first few months. And then I realized that my body was really stiffening up, and I realized that I didn't have enough precious me time, even if it was a small amount, for me to fill my cup, to connect to my to my source, connect to my soul, and do a little bit of meditation and stretching and things. So before, like, my old morning routine was probably too luxurious and a little bit too extravagant, but I could, and I've built the lifestyle that I could do that. So now I'm finding a balance between the two, and even if it's not get up and stretch and do my own thing immediately, I'm not going to dive into all of my work right now. I'm just going to take 10 minutes on the mat to listen to music, stretch my body, do what I need to do. So I'm recalibrating at the moment.
Nice. The
what about
part,
you? Do you resonate with any of that?
Yeah, I used to have a very luxurious morning practice that could last, 2.5 hours, and it was filled with like long meditation and breath work and embodiment practice and journaling and all these things. And like you, when he first came, it was like, oh, well, that's all gone out the window. And I think in the last probably longer than that, the last kind of 3 or 4 months, I've kind of settled into I know I can have half an hour of me time in the morning between kind of, we call it the handover, handing her over to my partner for the day or taking off to my mum. I can come home and I have half an hour. So I've got time to stretch. I've got time to maybe do some breathing. I've got time to do a little bit of meditation. And, in the space I have, doing what feels good for me then, what I've really settled on is something that kind of brings me more into presence, because what I found in my journey is that having a little one has caused my mind to be running and 20 million tabs open because I'm considering and thinking a lot more. So it's like, how can I find a practice or a collection of practices that will bring me more into kind of presence for my day, for the work day especially, and allow me to be really with the people I'm with and not be kind of distracted and thinking about strollers or walkers or what's it called, sleeping bags
and 20 million other things that you've got to consider and think about. So what are those practices that really bring you back to presence most for you?
Bit of meditation, breath work, stretching. I found stretching has been really nice to like just get into the body. And also, I've upped my working out in the last kind of 3 months because, like you mentioned, I'd say the dad bod occurred in my life and I was like, oh no, I don't want to go down this road. This is not a road I'm willing to go down. I'm going to take some drastic action about this, and I want to shift this and bring my food back into line, because it's very easy just to be comfortable.
And you're like, I'm not having that.
No, I was like, no, that's not happening to me. I need to get back into seriousness about this. And so, and I'm just sorting everything out in that kind of department. But it's what can I do to bring back to presence? Meditation, stretching, a little bit of breath work. Those kind of work really well for me, especially if I can just like do them in a space kind of uninterrupted.
Undisturbed, uninterrupted. So important. And I think like it could be, so many of these things could be looked at as selfish and time away from other things that need to happen. But I think we touched on it earlier, and that is that this is all very important work to work on yourself. And when you do work on yourself, you are going out into the world with a better version of yourself to show up for the family and for the friends and for your business and for all the relationships that you have. So it's not selfish at all. It's working on yourself and understanding what it is that you need to be your best self.
And how that is supportive to the family and the unit in the long term. Because being a martyr isn't, as much as it may sometimes feel like the thing we should do or look good to the outside world, it's not the thing that's necessarily productive to ourselves and our families.
Yeah, in the long run, especially.
Exactly. I have a question. This is again a bit of a change of tact.
Bring it on.
What's a possibly controversial idea that you hold around the kind of fitness and health world that may be uncomfortable for people to digest?
Difficult question. I went pretty much plant-based like over a year and a half ago. it was a thing that was just building up in me for a few years about my meat intake, and I was wanting to be the kindest version of myself, and there were some misalignments going on, and I wasn't taking action because of the fitness protein thing, and you can't build muscle without lots of meat. And I've been obviously focused on protein intake and meat intake for all of my fitness career and building a body. So I didn't know anything otherwise. So yeah, I went about gradually reducing and removing my meat intake. And I haven't had any issues. I'm still alive and I still have muscle, and I realize that I can get all the nutrition I need from that. So whilst I hold zero judgments on anybody that eats meat and whatever lifestyle people hold, I want to just share this message for the people who were like me a few years ago, that questioned whether they could be healthy and whether they could be fit, be strong, and recover without meat. And yeah, so I just wanted to challenge that narrative that it isn't necessary and isn't needed if it calls to you, and if that feels like to be a part of your journey and your experimentation, then go for it, basically.
Do you feel that the kind of protein thing is one of those things that people kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of overblow when it comes to kind of building muscle and building size?
Without a doubt, protein is required and essential. Whether the amounts have been kind of blown out of proportion. I think the amounts that we throw around as fitness people are the top end, whether it's 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and these kind of calculations that I've always worked towards. So they might be like the top end, and can be maybe a little bit less for most people if you're not like an elite sports person or a pro bodybuilder or something like that. But if you're looking to be healthy and lean and have some muscle, but not only that, but how possible it is to achieve those numbers from plant-based sources, basically. And I'm also like, if you go out about it without any planning or structure, then it probably is hard. So I'm in this place of wanting to inspire people to do this if it calls to them, but also that you can't just do it by just going to the supermarket and eating what you want and doing whatever. Like, you do have to take some control and responsibility out of the diet that you have, and looking for high protein sources. And then it is totally possible.
Yeah. I'd wonder, I guess I'm going to throw something in here, the kind of the industrialization we have of meat and food, this big push to, I feel like there's this, on one hand, there's people who are talking about going plant-based and like, plant-based is good for you, it's good for the planet, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the other side. It feels like there's this real pushback from people around that idea. There's like this real kind of like carnivore diet, and like, you need meat. There's this other side. And I'm always wonder, like, what's the relationship? And I wonder, what your thoughts are on this relationship between the kind of industrialized meat industry that we have in the UK and we have in the US, that's really trying to push meat protein on people who maybe really don't need as much as they think they need to consume.
I think that's what impacted me most, really, is just the sheer industry, the size of the industry of the meat and dairy industry, and how upsetting it was to me to understand the size of it and how unnecessary it is, basically. But more to your question, I don't know whether it's for political means or industrial business means. Everything goes through trends, and I think the extreme diets go through trends inevitably, until whether there's enough science and enough debunking to happen. But whether it's businesses, influencers, or trends are preyed on people's weakness, really, or of looking for something different, looking for whether it's a magic pill or something to heal. And more broadly, to just the meat and plant-based question, is more about just, you can't really sell any drugs or medicine or trends to somebody who's healthy and to somebody who eats from the earth and somebody who practices all these healthy habits. So I think there's always going to be pushes from multiple different angles from companies and industries to latch onto people's insecurities and weaknesses. And I think meat might be one of those, especially for, I think the bigger the anti-meat topic will be, the bigger the pro-meat topic will be. And we see that in the industry for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of... I find it quite fascinating myself because I kind of flick between myself. I have a very flexible diet, but I cut down meat very often over the years. Or if I notice I'm having a lot of meat at the moment, I need to cut this down. How people react when you tell them that you're either cutting down meat or you're not eating meat at the moment or you're plant-based, there's a very personal nature to it, they feel, it's almost like you're attacking their morals. And I imagine that you probably come up against some of this personally.
Yes, definitely. That's why I kind of approach this topic with as much non-judgmental kind of way, so that people don't feel triggered or attacked, because I think it is a very personal choice. And if they're being triggered, then it's probably something inside of them is more of a mirror that they should actually confront and ask, why am I being triggered by this? Unless it's some like hardcore vegan that's saying, go vegan, then yes, that's something else. But if it's somebody that's just expressing something that's coming up for them, like you saying, I think I've been eating a bit too much recently, I'm going to reduce. That's another thing. That's you expressing your personal journey, your thoughts. So if somebody gets triggered by that, then that's more on them to express. But yeah, it's honestly, it's difficult, like, because I am trying to live my most aligned, authentic self, not just in conversations and with people I meet, but also on social media, which is a whole other world when you've got thousands of people and people are going to be commenting who don't truly know you. I've been struggling a little bit, not just on this topic, but just all topics, where I've closed myself in this fitness topic of people know me and see me as this fitness guy with the physique and the workouts. If I talk about anything outside of that, it's sometimes difficult, whether I talk about spirituality or I'd never talk in depth about politics, but if I just touch on the edge of something like that, or even edge topics like plant-based diets and stuff like that, it's difficult because I want to express from my true self, and sometimes you get hit by negativity, and it sometimes empowers me to be like, no, I'm going to continue to speak about what I believe. And other times it just shrinks me back, like, fine, burpees it is.
I really understand that, because I always think of footballers, right? Because I grew up watching a lot of football in the 90s and into the kind of noughties, and footballers only talked about football. They did nothing else really in those days. They didn't talk of racism. They refused to speak about it. It's only really we've seen in the last kind of 5-10 years, footballers start to do what, many commentators say they've stepped outside their box and they started to talk about other things. We think of Rashford talking about the school meals. We think of Raheem Sterling talking about racism, or Gareth Southgate, talking about the range of social issues, and how people want to pigeonhole someone into the people on the outside, whether that, in social media, and we live in a world of kind of social media, really, they often project like the image of this person, and they forget there's a human being there. They forget that underneath like your wonderful workouts is also a man who cares about animals and cares about the impact of eating animals on his body, or the energetic imprint he's leaving through doing that. And when I'm hearing, and I'm projecting slightly myself, is like when they hear you talking about these things that are outside of the box they put you in, they experience anger and frustration, or they experience a mirror that they're uncomfortable with.
Yeah. It's so true. It's really true, and I think that's what's happened and is happening, and partly that's down to me and the brand I've created and the brand everybody creates for themselves, and you can't control the position that you take in somebody's mind. Like that's just like you said, we all create a vision or a thought of somebody. And that box is being created. So I think I just got to keep blasting through that box, basically.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but it's probably a thing for me. Like, it's probably a lesson in it for me, about wanting to please everyone, wanting to be a fence sitter. Like, what I'm learning is well, why do I care what people think? Like, if it brings negative comments or unfollows, why do I care? And it's complex. Oh, it's connected to my business. Oh, my followers. I've built all these followers up. So it's a complex thing. But I think there's lessons in it for me.
And it is a complex thing because it's, kind of going back to what we talked about fatherhood. It's not just your business. It's like, that's how you sustain and you look after your family and you create the life that you want. I have this same juggling act sometimes myself. Like, oh God, I always forget her name in the case in France around the husband that was soliciting men to rape his wife online. And for a long time I sat with like, God, what do I want to say about this? Like, I want to say something and I feel confident enough to say something, but whatever I say is going to be really uncomfortable for men to hear because I have my opinions. And eventually I sat and I wrote a post one Saturday morning when I probably should have been asleep, to be honest. But it's really difficult to talk about topics that, like you said, it might offend somebody, it might upset someone, it might hurt somebody, or they might generate negativity, because ultimately the negativity comes to you and then you have to deal with it, right? No one's really shielding you from that. Like, if people roll up in your comments and they just like calling you all sorts of names just because you've decided to not eat meat anymore or meat products anymore, you kind of have to kind of deal with that. And it's very easy to like want to just protect ourselves kind of energetically from other people's hate or judgment. And it's this balancing act about being in alignment, as you said, and doing good for the world and putting out messages that actually really matter beyond, some burpees, knowing that there's more profound truths that you hold to express.
Exactly. And I think everyone should honor that we are complex humans, and behind what we've created, that the footballer, the fitness guy, there is a real complex human there with beliefs and a purpose, and messages to share. And like with what you just said about the post, is that so many times there's been some big like global issues or things. I think I really want to share my thoughts about this. And sometimes I've gone and done it and it's been difficult. And other times I've gone to do it and stopped myself because I thought, oh, no, just no, I'm going to protect the energy of this. And maybe just my intention of my belief on this is enough for now, just holding the love on this topic, or holding the non-duality of this rather than talking about it, because sometimes you're faced with exactly what you're trying to shed light on, whether it's wars or breakouts or battles or destruction, where there's a lot of heated emotion in the moment when there's people's lives and nationalities at cost. And it's a very heightened emotional time. And I think saying anything is going to get a response. So sometimes it's just going with the flow anyway. And other times it's just saying, now's not the time to share my perspective.
Yeah. Pick your battles, as someone once said to me. And it's I find it quite difficult. I find it quite a difficult balance, because I think as men sometimes we often, not you and I, but I see as men, when the men I work with, clients, will often shy away from any topics that could lead to kind of public ridicule or public attention that's not necessarily what they want. There's a protection of reputation. I think we have a deeper fear around the destruction of our reputation as men. And it's so easy to perpetuate, like to keep doing this. And I often call my clients sometimes, I'm like, well, you have this, you have these feelings about this topic. Do you ever talk to your friends about it? And they're like, well, I don't know how to broach it. And I see like sometimes, so I think it's so important for men. It's like, we can have these little conversations. It's why I love the podcast, right? Because we can have this conversation here and other people will listen to it, but also we can have a conversation in our lives about things. We don't have to necessarily put them on social media. And sometimes that is useful because it then starts a wave of like, okay, we talked about this topic and that was difficult, or it's really important in the world, but it is the balance between the kind of negativity with the emotional charge of things, whether that, like you said, whether it's wars, whether it's presidents being elected and removed and prime ministers being elected and removed, especially if it's an area that we may not feel that we have like the most expertise and all the update information. It can be very easy to just go, and I do sometimes myself. I'm like, I don't fancy this battle today. I don't have the energy for this one, actually. It's been many a time where I've seen things and I'm like, I just don't have the energy for this right now. It's too much. It would take too much from me.
I find it difficult when I'm passionate about a topic and I feel the personal pressure to be a part of the conversation. But you're right. It's choosing the battles and protecting yourself ultimately. And some of it's ego to be part of the conversation, to be right in the future, to be right in history, or to or whatever, but or to try and support and be there as a positive impact for my following and stuff like that. I feel the pressure sometimes, but sometimes it's best just to leave some things and know what's important.
Yeah. And on the topic of kind of expanding beyond fitness, because what I've kind of gleaned from this conversation is like from you, and as some of the conversation before is, it's not just about the burpees and the reps and the amount of protein and the nutrients. There's a real deeper side of fitness. And even when you talked about the burpees challenge, like what that brought forward, when you talked about the burpees challenge you did, it's very similar to how I felt when I did Vipassana for 10 days and sat and meditated. I guess the question here is around kind of discipline and motivation, in our fitness, because this is something that people struggle with. We're in February. This is traditionally the point at which people's gym memberships that they signed up to have gone unused. And there's lots of different types of motivation. And maybe we'll talk about the first one, which I think a lot of people use, is this kind of dark motivation. The motivation of shame and ridicule. The motivation I find with myself and my client comes through our inner critic. Who's like berating us into doing the thing we want to do. Is this something you see a lot in the fitness world with the people that you work with? Yeah.
That motivation is like that it's a push. It's a reaction. It's short-lived. It's intense. It gets you through a little bit. It works at the beginning of January. It works before Ibiza in the summer, because there could be shame or ridicule on the other side of it. So motivation for that works for that very short amount of time, but it's superficial and it's not connected to your core and your being, and it's not sustainable ultimately. And most of everything that we want to do in our lives needs to come from a place of sustainability, from a place of ease and flow. And not saying fitness and motivation is always easy, but finding a motivation that's more internal, more like a pull, more like this is connected to a positive emotion, not a negative one. So what motivation do you call that? If the other one was, did you say dark motivation?
Light motivation?
Yeah, light motivation, yeah. Or I guess other conversations might have called it motivation and inspiration, or push and pull. And yeah, this light motivation feels like a pull, and it doesn't just happen. I think it comes from self-reflection. It comes from actual working on yourself and inquiring about yourself and taking the time to think, what is it that I truly want? And then asking why. Okay, I want to lose body fat. Why? I want to build muscle. Why? I want to be fitter and more mobile. Why? And if the why is something about proving something to some ex-girlfriend, then dig a little bit deeper and keep going and realize that it should all come flowing back to inside of you, not external to you. And the motivation should be about the self-love that you have for yourself and wanting for your best life, not to prove to anything to anybody else outside of you, but to thrive yourself. And when you connect the dots between the action and the plan and the behaviors with that internal, deep, aligned motivation, then it is sustainable and it is easier to create those actual lifestyle habits. And there's days where you're like, I can't be bothered, but it shouldn't last long, because you then hopefully look at your vision board or your journaling and you realize what's important to you. No, I want to do this because it aligns with the person that I want to be and the person that I am. Motivation is a real big topic, and I talk to a lot of people about this because it really pains me to see people start and stop and fall off and quit. And it's usually because of this motivation topic and not having a strong alignment to what's important, and usually taking on too much. Dark motivation is usually also associated with changing everything at once and transforming your life and changing your entire diet and doing too much exercise and neglecting other parts of your life. And in a week, 2 weeks, it all falls apart and gives up because it wasn't sustainable. So actually finding less action and small regular changes is more meaningful and much better for making long-term transformation and long-term change.
And it's so similar as you speak there, so similar to kind of the work I do with men around the ways of relating and their relationship. Is like, we start with the why, like so many men come to me because breakup. That's one of the most popular reasons that men end up sitting in front of me. They've had a breakup and they're wanting their ex back, or they're wanting to get over it. And often with the ex back is there's this desire to prove them wrong. I want to prove them wrong that I'm a good person, I'm a good guy. I don't know what your thoughts are. This like dark motivation can only drive you so long, right, in life, because it actually, I listened to a podcast with Chris Williamson about this, and he talked about his own personal experience of dark motivation, of kind of wanting to prove people wrong and wanting to be better. And he talked about how it can only sustain you so long before it drags you down into the darkness with it. You become very cynical about people, because if the thing that's driving you is this external proving people wrong, then suddenly your lens of how you see the world is all about this kind of competition with everybody else. It's when actually, what I'm hearing you saying, which I kind of feel is this, this pull you described, or this positive motivation, comes from this desire that's just like to be as an embodiment of being. Like, I'm choosing to embody this being because this is what feels right or good to me, or is in alignment with who I am both being and I want to be through time and space.
I think that what you just said also brings up in me about external validation and that competition with others. So a good check is to check whether if nobody was ever going to see the results of this, would I still do it? If this was purely for me and the mirror and how I feel, would I still do it? Or is this purely just because I want somebody to see it? And we all have an ego. That's all there. But being aware of the ego and what part it's playing in our journey is very important. And to keep it in check and to find that balance with what the ego is driving, and also what is beneath the ego and what is important to us and our health and our longevity and self-care, and for ourselves to be happy in mind and body.
Mind, being happy in mind. I started my fitness journey probably over 20 years ago. Also off the back of a breakup, actually.
It's a good time to start. I mean, sometimes that motivation can take you onto a real healthy place.
Yeah. I was 17 years old the first time I walked into a gym, and gyms were very different places back when I was 17 going into a gym. I was going into like a real meathead gym, and they would say there was a meathead gym. There wasn't a woman. I don't think you saw one woman came on a Sunday with her partner. And he was this massive dude, so no one even looked in her direction. What was I trying to get at? I was going to talk about the fact that like the culture around exercise and gyms in particular and weightlifting has really shifted from like this very much like meathead steroids type of thing, and was become very popular in the world. But one aspect I'm seeing, and you mentioned there, the mind, that I think is often neglected is the mental health aspect, the looking after the mind. And I get the impression from knowing you and speaking to you that like for you, this is a holistic journey. It's not just about like get the body in a place at all costs. Maybe your life was like that in times gone by, but there's this real aspect of alignment of mind, body, and I say soul, of like bridge, like having them moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
How has your opinions around kind of mental health shifted through your fitness journey?
To respond to the first part, my time in the fitness career, I've seen a lot of people in incredible shape who aren't necessarily happy. So whilst your exterior can be a sign of potentially physical health, not always, is definitely not always an indication of your mental health. So it's always been very important to me, and I've always been very interested right from the beginning to help people on this more holistic journey. It's been very, very obvious to me from the beginning that this is a holistic overall well-being journey for people. And sometimes, and most often than not, going into the physical, into the body first is sometimes a gateway into better mental health, but not always. It can go off into different paths where it's a bit more negative mental health if it's taken in the wrong paths. But to be super aware of the mind, body, spirit or soul, and to think, how am I serving all areas and moving forwards in the right direction is important. So yeah, there were parts of my own personal career where it was all about the body. Like when fitness modeling was my priority, I was PTing. I was like, how do I get to be that guy on the front cover of magazines? I would undereat, overtrain, and my mind really wasn't. I mean, thankfully, I think I was quite happy, but I probably didn't have there wasn't a good balance in regards to my relationship with food, with training, and other aspects of my life, to the point where I was restricting myself and then binging after either photo shoots or castings and things like that. And actually it wasn't long until I realized there was an imbalance in regards to waiting to be happy and waiting to feel accomplished when I got there. When I did this, I will be happy. When I get there, I will be happy. And probably quite a few years of repeating this cycle, I started to realize, okay, I've achieved these great things, but every time I get there, I can see this other mountain, this other peak that I want to get to, and I'll be happy when I get on that one. So then I started to realize that happiness needs to come on the journey, not just waiting for the 0.1% of the life journey. So it took practice to find more of a rhythm and a momentum of my health and fitness lifestyle that supported my mindset, my mental health as well. And social media helped that a little bit, because whilst like we spoke about this internal motivation and dark motivation, etc., and external and internal, there is a paradox to that as well. And I found that whilst social media was a very small thing, there was Instagram, Facebook, but this is 2015, 2014. It wasn't as massive as it is now. I was mostly getting in shape for castings and photo shoots that were weeks or months separated. So that gave me plenty of time to binge over the weekend and then restrict for another 3 or 4 weeks before the next one. Very bad routine. But social media came around and I wanted to look good and I wanted to feel good every day for me to film a workout and take a photo and be confident in myself and my being. And that only came from doing the habits and doing the things that made me feel that way each day. And that wasn't eating crap. It was eating good food and sleeping and getting out in nature and exercising the body, not to destruction, but because it's enjoyable for the body. That's how it's evolved.
Mm. And you mentioned something about confident in self. Was it the case that you were doing these shoots and you're on covers of magazines and so forth, but the self that people probably thought you were and the self you were internally, was there a gap between that for you? Was you not as confident in self as you maybe portrayed?
Yeah, looking back, I think there was like a bit of body dysmorphia going on, a bit of classic feelings of just insecurity of not being good enough, not being lean enough, not being muscular enough, not being in good enough shape, just all of those kind of things, and really just putting the physical state on the pedestal and nothing else. And it took looking back to realize that, because in the moment I was in my own perspective, and that got me to what I achieved and what I did, which is great. But looking back at like photos, for example, I'm like, damn, I wish I was in that shape now. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I see it? So yes, and sometimes time and perspective helps. I mean, that's growing up. That's wisdom, isn't it, of experiences. So I think that's what happened.
I know that you have branched out beyond the world of just fitness and fitness modeling, and you're an actor now as well. And I remember you telling me a story when we met about how you manifested this. This is something you've wanted to do for quite a while, right?
Yes, it is. And yeah, I think I started to realize I was achieving so many of the things that I first thought were impossible, and many of the things that I wanted to do, I was starting to do, and I made it happen. So many years ago, I wanted to be an actor, and I was procrastinating for many years, or thinking that there would just be this natural transition from my modeling experience into being an actor, and it wasn't really happening, and I wasn't taking classes, and Hollywood wasn't calling me up. So I was like, what's going on? So I realized that I had to start taking action whilst also thinking about the energetics of it. And I'm a big believer of manifestation, and understanding the energy, and my spirituality journey opened up this understanding of physical action, but also belief and being and visualization, and how much of a big part that played in previous aspects of my career. So I thought, okay, well, I've got to start taking action on this. And I did. I behind the scenes started to work with a coach for 2 or 3 years on one-to-one sessions and workshops, and online and in person. And this was a challenge because I was building my fitness career and I needed every second of the day that I could get. And that's probably why I procrastinated for many years about taking action, because I had priorities. But over the years, I realized that nothing was happening, and nothing's going to happen unless I take action. So I decided to take action, and that was time away from my fitness business. But I've always been good at valuing the long-term discipline, what's the opposite of instant gratification? Maybe
delayed gratification.
Yeah, it must just be that. I've always been good at putting in the time and effort now, knowing that it's going to pay off later on. So I did that, and many years down the line, I then started to take kind of little low paid castings and little jobs and build up confidence. And last year was a great year. I had a handful of little jobs, feature films and short films. So it's starting to really unfold. And I've started to see some of the content back, and I've had a couple of premieres. So I'm really excited just to see where it goes alongside everything else that I'm doing. And many people ask, does it mean you finished your fitness career and things like that? But it's not. It's just another aspect of me, another passion. And for me, it all sits under one umbrella of my purpose and how I want to show up in the world and how I want to express myself. And there are a lot of interconnections, and one of them being embodiment. So much of what my acting training was with my fantastic coach called Yorgos Karamalagos, and he is all about authentic performance rooted in embodiment and truth. And I went in to learn how to act, and it actually really became a big part of my personal journey, really. And embodiment has been a tool that has been incredible for acting, but also a tool, like you said, a part of your morning routine. And it's a word that's being thrown out there, and it probably means a lot for lots of different people. But it really has been a part of my life that's helped bridge various aspects of my life together.
And I wrote down as you were talking about manifesting, actually, embodiment. Like, how has, because a lot of people think about manifesting and they read The Secret and they're like, I'm going to sit and think about my Lamborghini every day. I'm going to sit and think about my Lamborghini every day and imagine myself driving the Lamborghini and feeling, happy. But I wonder, what's the kind of link for you between, say, embodiment and manifestation for you?
Rooted truth. A lot of people go wrong in manifestation because they say one thing, but something about them, either consciously or deeply more unconsciously, doesn't believe it, and it might be rooted in lack. So if they close their eyes and dream about that Lamborghini, but something about their being doesn't believe that they have a Lamborghini or that they'll ever get a Lamborghini, then they'll just keep manifesting the fact that they don't have a Lamborghini. And that's the secret of manifestation, is embodying that it's now, that it's already happened, and that you're living that reality. And that's really important for manifestation. So it might be really difficult to grab hold of that reality if it's really distant. So it's important to really understand yourself, to find, okay, this feels very real to me. I can sense and feel and taste and experience in a meditation or a visualization that this is real and it's happened now, and I can feel the gratitude of it being. How does that link with embodiment? I mean, I think that is a part of embodiment. It's then going out and living, embodying that, because there's one thing doing a visualization for 5 or 10 minutes and then going out into your life and not embodying it, because manifestation and getting what we want in life is all about us becoming and being that person. And if for 23 hours and 55 minutes of the day you're not that person, but for 5 minutes in visualization you are, then it's weighted in the wrong direction. Of course, you've got to go out and live reality, and your environment is going to be there, but you've got to do the best you can to work on your conditioning and your beliefs. And that's why sometimes a spiritual journey and manifestation journey is a real personal journey of deconditioning. And deconditioning is a big part of embodiment practice, I find, as well, because embodiment to me in my acting journey has been more about getting out of the head, or less time in the head and more time in the body. And this, for me, opened up my, just gives space, gives freedom into the being, slows down the thoughts so that you can process more and be in fine tune and increase the sensitivity between the relationship of you and you, with your mind, with your body, and with your spirit and soul, and to understand those different voices. So Yeah, that's quite a broad answer, but I think it's quite a broad topic with so many nuances.
And I finish up because I know you're running a retreat in September. As I saw, that's bringing together the fitness and embodiment. And I'm really curious to how you see the kind of link between those two worlds for you.
Yeah, well, this is a collaboration with Yorgos, who I previously mentioned. So after training with him, his love of fitness and my love of embodiment, and how we started to see the connection between the two, and so much that it covers. And like so many things that we spoke about previously about fitness and motivation, it would be great to go to a retreat and do awesome workouts and everything, but it's even more transformative if we help people dive deeper, have great workouts, but understand themselves more along the path. And whether it's about body language or how we show up in our relationships, or the traumas and the baggage that we carry, and obviously a whole variety of different topics, we started to realize that this concept as a retreat can be really, really powerful, because it brings so many things that people love of good weather and good workouts and healthy food, whilst also just a little bit of challenge and empowerment. I mean, most people find it uncomfortable to ecstatically dance in front of people, or be blindfolded, or massage another person, or these kind of things that are done on either like lots of men's groups and various other types of retreats. But the process of doing something uncomfortable outside of what you're normally doing is normally a gateway to some personal growth.
It's expansive.
Yes, as long as it's done in a safe, respectful, and supported way. Of course, I'm sure there's many retreats or workshops out there that aren't always positive, but I know from a lot of the experiences and conversations I've had, there's lots of work going on like this, which is really amazing to see. And I think it's so good for everybody to be experiencing these kind of things.
100%, man. 100%. I'm mindful that time has run away really quickly. We've covered a lot of stuff, which is great.
Keep going to the
end. I want to say a huge thank you to you today for just like bringing all of you, all these wonderful parts. When I looked through your Instagram, I saw like so many of these little snippets of you in between all the fitness stuff, and just to hear how it's so really weaved together in you as you, and how it kind of, like you said, is an alignment of just like being in the world and being a positive influence on the world, but not just through, helping people stay healthy, but help people stay healthy at really multiple layers of their being, and then also expanding into parts of themselves that they've maybe not experienced and not kind of delved into. It's just been beautiful to hear how that's all weaved together, and including your, fatherhood.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's good to hear that, because I'm sometimes unsure about like my social media and Instagram and everything, and the courage I've needed sometimes to share things that aren't in the box that was created in just a hardcore fitness. So yeah, I'm still experimenting in this way, but I'm glad to hear from your perspective that you can see some cohesiveness between it all, and I hope people are experiencing that as well. And in the topic of bringing all of myself, I'll apologize. My brain just feels totally unoptimized, whether it's the lack of sleep or out of practice. So many mind blanks and so many wish-washy sentences. That's all of me right now in this moment. And that's what it's about.
That's what is present for you. And I'm sure the listeners are wanting to find out about you, where they can find out more about your retreat as well. And I know you also have a platform for people to help them get fit and healthy.
Yeah, you can find me on all social media with my name, Alex Crockford. My retreat happens in Crete on the 1st to the 8th of September. And if not this year, then most probably next year as well. So just keep that date in mind and take a look. And yeah, I have my own health and fitness app. So just search my name in the app stores and you'll find that there as well. If you want to get fit and have a program for home or for gym, and you know from this conversation that it's more than just the workouts, but being part of the community and being in my sphere, I'll help you in all ways.
Fantastic. And all those links will be down in the show notes.
Thanks.
Big thank you, Alex.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, as I always ask, share it with somebody. Maybe there's someone in your life who's in the fitness world, and maybe they're not as aligned. They only see one dimension of how they can be and be accepted, and just pass it on to them.
Yeah.
But until next week, big thank you to your listeners, and I'll speak to you soon.